is being destroyed all around us. Using money to try to address that problem, it's shooting yourself in the foot. Evolve or perish, grow up or die. An entirely new level of human consciousness is needed right now, or we're all dead. Mankind openly descends into a world of bloodshed without end. Dog eat dog until everything is killed and the last man commits suicide or is poisoned, having all the toys, and they mean nothing. When you believe you're already dead and you got nothing to live for, you fight better than you've ever fought in your life. When your back's to the wall. That's the only time when humans actually choose to evolve, at the moment of death. At the moment when we face our destruction. That's when the greatest leaps in human consciousness and the leaps of human heart take place. I'm tired. I'm ready to die. Great, bring it on. I'm not afraid of death at all. That'll be a big relief for me. That'll be graduation. God, I get out of this godforsaken shithole that I love more than anything else in the world. The Scout's knife is sharp on both edges. It cuts in both directions. My name is Michael C. Rupert. Most people would know me from the documentary Colapso. It's a theatrical documentary that was released in 2009. I had written 2 books, one Crossing the Rubicon, which is a big book in 2004, and a smaller book, Confronting Collapse, which came out with the movie in 2009. And I started off as a whistleblower. I'm a former LAPD narcotics detective. I caught CIA bringing drugs into the country in 1976, 77, and I tried to blow the whistle on that then, and I received the whistleblower treatment. There were attempts on my life. I come from a CIA family, and I was promoting very rapidly in LAPD, an honors grad from UCLA. The CIA wanted me, but when I discovered that what they were asking me to do would be to protect CIA drug shipments coming into the country, I couldn't do it. That was a bit of suicide that I couldn't commit on myself. I had a face-to-face confrontation with a CIA director, John Deutsch, at Locke High School in Compton in 1996 in November. And I confronted him on world television. That confrontation and John Deutsch's poor handling of it cost him his job as Director of Central Intelligence. In Native American ways, we would say that I counted coup on him that day. That really put me on a public stage. I founded a newsletter called From the Wilderness in 1998, which lasted for 8 years, and we broke a great many scandals over the course of that, a great many exposés of government crimes. So I walked that walk for a long time, and as the world situation had deteriorated, we saw wars after war after war. We saw peak oil giving way to tar sands pollution, and we saw natural gas running out, giving way to fracking and all the horrors that fracking brings. As we saw the quality of life deteriorate at a breakneck pace, at an increasing pace around the world, I could no longer function in a three-dimensional Cartesian analysis of what's going on in the world. The only thing that was important to me was that I leave Northern California and all my relations in that world clean. I paid off everybody I could pay off. I gave away what I could give away. I made sure that I was walking away, leaving a place better than it was when I had found it. And I had no place to go. I was broke, absolutely broke. I came here to die or commit suicide. And so I came here with everything that I owned, including my dog rags and my vehicle. This was the only place I had to go. I had no money to get a place. And My good friend, my best friend Doug Lewis, who had been a bandmate of mine and knew White Trash from a band we formed in Venice, he had a bedroom and he had a bed. And he said, okay, you're coming here. So this was how I came to Crestone. I knew nothing about the place when I got here. The path you're supposed to follow is the only one that's left open in front of you. We're looking at the San Luis Valley. These are the Baca land grants close to us. The Great Sand Dune National Park is maybe 4 or 5 miles that way. Crestone, Colorado is just that way behind us. Looking out, we are at the lodge and home of the Singing Stone Lodge. Christopher Long is the medicine man, who was my teacher. He's a practitioner of indigenous ways, Lakota spirituality.
My name is Christopher Long, and I'm otherwise known as Wahihi Yuha Miniktelo. That's the one that walks with the power of the mole. The mole is the creature that lives under the ground. So that's why the altar behind me, we have the mole earth. On top of the altar there, we have the buffalo skull, as well as the eagle staff. So those represent the eagle, the sky, the buffalo, the earth. So that was one of the things that was passed to me along with this altar. So there's a combination of different teachers and different altars that come together here. But there's always variations from medicine man to medicine man. I think religion and spirituality in general is a very unpopular thing now, especially with technology. There's a lot of doubt in people's minds, and that's very normal. I mean, this reality is based off of reason. It's been designed so that you can't really see beyond our mycopic viewpoint. And that's why it's really important for me to do this. My work is to show people the magic and to allow them to believe that.
We believe everything is alive and has a spirit and a blessing, and right now is a time when great healing is needed all over the world. And I'm going to ask, my prayer will be that the spirits guide me to give the best answers that will help the most people, to reach the most hearts, to help us all understand there's just 7 billion humans on this planet. There aren't different countries or anything else. I get more out of this stuff every time I do it. It's so very healing, but it takes you out completely of that Cartesian tyranny of ones and zeros and technology and money and analysis and all that stuff that's killing the world right now that we live in. And we very much want to love and honor that world, so that we all can live healthy lives, hopefully. I summed it up in a speech I gave in Portland in 2011 on September the 11th. Now, I left Sebastopol about 7 months later. When I said that the ultimate crime and everything that's wrong with this world comes from whoever wrote into Genesis that mankind should have dominion over this planet and go forth and multiply and subdue the fowls. That's the crime of separating human consciousness from the consciousness of all the other things that we need, or whether it's the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, the animals that we eat. We live in a monetary paradigm that demands infinite growth, so balance is not possible. There are 7.1 billion people on the world today. There were only 1 billion people on the world when man discovered oil. And all 6.1 billion exponential growth like that. And I've done this, everybody knows this gesture on my part. Human population went like this. And all populations, once they hit that unfettered growth, they all have a collapse. They all dive and die off. So many people are so fucking in love with technology, and they're idiots. Techno fixes don't work. Let me give you some examples. In 1900, New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago, St. Louis, San Francisco were all awash in horse shit. There were only 90 million people in the United States then. Those cities were just buried in horse shit, and they needed a technological fix for that. The technological fix for the horse was the automobile, which relied on fossil fuel. Well, what did that bring us? That brought us more infant growth, brought us traffic jams, brought us horrendous smog. I grew up all over the country, but I remember LA in the 1960s, you could not breathe. It was so painful due to the smog. It hurt to breathe. So we went to catalytic converters. But then it's been known about peak oil that the world was going to start running out of oil, crossing a bell curve, since the late 1940s when the prophet, when the guy who discovered it, a physicist, M. King Hubbard, predicted it. He was the granddaddy. So the techno fix for peak oil was tar sands. Well, what are tar sands doing? You've destroyed hundreds of million acres of boreal forest, the lungs of the planet in Canada. You burn copious amounts of natural gas, which we ran out of to boil water to wash tar sands. Look at the net energy input for that. You're burning natural gas, and oil or coal, whatever, to boil this water to wash the tar sand. You wash out this super sticky, poisonous substance called bitumen out, which is not oil. And then that has to be refined, and you destroy this most pristine boreal forest. It's killing the wildlife, it's infected the water table, it passes through pipelines, you know, the pipelines break and it destroys the ecosystems wherever it's exposed. So North America passed a natural gas cliff in 2002, 2003, conventional natural gas. You just drill a well and, you know, burn it off. So the techno fix for running out of natural gas was fracking. Oh great, now you can set your water faucet on fire. You can poison yourself, give yourself cancer. You can send the poisons downstream and kill fish and destroy trees. That's the techno fix. So people who are looking to techno fixes for these problems are suicidal, and they're deluded, and they're stupid. Holes are drilled deep into Mother Earth until it reaches a shale formation. It's hard rock. And what I found, due to a patent that was issued to Halliburton, Dick Cheney, they're shooting depleted uranium into Mother Earth to fracture the shale, to liberate the gas. And they are pouring horrendously toxic chemicals, benzene, many other chemicals down there to extract this natural gas. Fracking also has been shown to cause earthquakes in Arkansas and Missouri, and it deeply disturbs Mother Earth. It's a desperate drive for energy, which shows that all of the leaders of the industrialized world who talk about growth and who are serving the IMF, the World Bank, the US dollar hegemony, an infinite growth monetary paradigm, which is a pyramid scheme, have absolutely no concern, a complete psychotic disconnect for our relationship with the planet. Well, people are realizing that they're dying. I mean, American citizens are standing up when they develop cancer, when their children develop open lesions and sores and leukemia and all kinds of neurological disorders as a result of being poisoned by fracking. What they're doing systematically is destroying the fresh water tables to the point where many states have banned it. Pennsylvania, New York's banned a lot. Some countries have banned fracking completely, yet they're still pushing it. We just had an amazing uprising revolt on the part of the Elsipogtog and Mi'kmaq warriors in New Brunswick, who defeated the RCMP and the neoliberal government of Stephen Harper, a lying son of a bitch who broke all the native treaties, because they realized that if we don't have fresh water, we can't live. And fracking is absolutely destructive.
Of the City of Pittsburgh Chief Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all those assembled to immediately disperse.
The police aren't arming themselves, they're being armed. It's a giveaway. And this came with the Patriot Act. It was totally, patently unconstitutional. Absolutely. That should have then prompted a revolution among the American people. As I read the Patriot Act, what I said was, oh my God, Katie, bar the door. This is the federal government taking over every police department in the country. All of a sudden, these taps were open. All this money started flowing to local police agencies. But the deal was every police agency had to use a uniform government computer system that CIA or the FBI could get into. It used to be that if I ran a sheriff's office out here, the FBI couldn't get into my computers. But now with the software techniques, the U.S. government not only can get into any law enforcement agency's computers, they can shut them down. Radio frequencies were synchronized. Standardization of weapons and issues of all that was done with the intent to turn American police departments into a de facto army with the same equipment, the same radio frequencies for the purpose of command and control and information control. So that's pretty much been accomplished so that as we reach the point where we're at now, where everything is falling apart, you know, no county sheriff anywhere is going to turn down an armored vehicle, you know, but there are strings that come with all of that. So we see Department of Homeland Security buying 4 million rounds of hollow point ammunition, handgun ammunition. That's to shoot Americans. And I stay away from some of the very unfounded, hysterical right-wing conspiracies, but it's a very clear fact that the United States government has declared the American people to be the enemy. Americans could be jailed under NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, a couple of years ago, without trial indefinitely anywhere in the world. That's why the Constitution has been shredded, torn up, and thrown away. The great flaw of the Occupy movement was that it couldn't focus on a specific demand. The energy behind the Occupy movement, much the same as with the Arab Spring, was an absolute total inability to accept the obvious criminality that was ruling everything and destroying everything at the time. The fatal flaw of Occupy was that it couldn't come to a clear focus as to what was needed, because the consciousness had not evolved to the point where you could focus on a list of demands. The beauty, the power of Occupy, which is why Department of Homeland Security had to destroy it, was that in the Occupy camps, a zone of consciousness was created, and the human learning curve was accelerating rapidly. In other words, the awareness, people were coming to awareness very, very quickly about what the real issues were. And that's what scared Homeland Security and Barack Obama and the US government and the banks on Wall Street terribly. What was produced as a result of Occupy? Not much, but now we see the American people now afraid of taking to the streets after the brutal crackdown across all of Occupy. I had been looking for a dog for a while at shelters because I wanted to rescue a dog. And they walked me through, and they have the kennels on either side. You walk between rows of dogs and you look at them. And Rags was like, he was the first dog on the left. And he was a puppy, and he was covered with mange. He had scabby bare spots all over his fucking body. But he was the happiest dog I've ever seen in my life. And I look at him, and his eyes lock and track me, and he's like up on his legs, and then he watches and he falls over on his back, and we don't break eye contact. And I go, oh fuck, that's my dog. I mean, I just knew it. And so I started taking him to the dog park, and but Squishy showed up at the park, and I noticed Rags and Squishy, they were homosexual lovers from the gate as puppies, man. They were hilarious. They were making poses that they haven't thought of in the San Fernando Valley yet. And I noticed that Squishy's owner was this guy who just somebody needed to buy him some fucking clothes because he just had holes in everything he wore. And he looked kind of scraggly. That would be Doug. But I noticed that he was really good with his dog.
We only talked about dogs.
And music, really.
And then we got into music. And then
And I
you
was
told me
talking about
your
Colapse.
experience, and I gave you a Cheaters album.
Yep. I hadn't sung live since after I'd left LAPD. I sang on the Santa Monica restaurant, on the Boathouse restaurant, on the Santa Monica Pier for about 4 years.
The point is that Mike's got a good voice, and it was, for me, it was good enough to work with, because the strength for me, again, going back, was the shared common interest in terms of direction, in terms of, well, what's the music about? I mean, anybody who's not making protest music, or at least music about social commentary, it's just like, what's the point?
New White Trash, 2008. Everybody who lost their homes in the foreclosure crisis, all the people who got fucked out of jobs, vacations, all that stuff they thought what they were entitled to, there were new white trash. Oh, like there's a real world out there that I can be a part of, and I'd never thought I would be a part of, and now I'm new white trash and old white trash. I was a cover singer. In other words, I sang somebody else's music. Doug gave that to me. He asked me to hang out, and the first song that I ever got a songwriting credit on, ever, was Baby, I'm on My Way. And I was sitting over at the house, and Doug had these incredible verses and chords. It's late at night, and I'm coming down the street, and he's talking to his girlfriend. She says the oven's warm, and there's something to eat. And all this loving talk from a woman waiting for a man to come home. Just what a guy, like, we all fantasize about, like there's somebody really there eager to see us. And he went through all these verses and all these lines, and I just said, fuck, baby, I'm on my way. He goes, sing that! I stood up at the mic, and he played this stuff, and it came to the point where I sang it. And this is where I discovered not only that words could come, but I could make notes too. Baby, I'm on my way home. And it was like a Manhattan Transfer cut. It was 8 minutes, and that was my first songwriting credit. I wrote those words, and so I got credit for that.
All right.
This is about exactly the way we'd work the whole time.
Yeah, I love this song. Maybe I should put this back on that first one.
High sky summer at dawn contains too many chemical trails in the autumn. And like that old Italian saying says, everything all goes to the bottom. It's gonna be a long, cold winter, my friend. It's gonna be a long, hot summer without end.
Here's a comment about our
She's a
music
ham.
on the web. From Pig Knickers. I'm not making this up.
Pig Knickers.
Mike Rupert has so lost the plot. I used to believe in him. Embarrassed about that now. And then I replied, thanks for tuning in.
It doesn't seem to me that I've lost the fucking plot.
I love it.
Seems to me I wrote the script for a lot of this a long fucking time ago, and it seems to be playing out just right. He's watching. Holy shit. Holy shit. He's watching television. And he's recognizing himself and Rags.
This is really happening.
This is, holy moly.
It's the 100th dog.
Yeah, we're there.
I knew it all along, Squishy. And if you are God, I never hit you.
I think that with Ed Snowden and his revelations and some very heroic whistleblowing, there's been a good change in consciousness that has set Washington and the banks, because Washington is owned by the banks now. The real government capital of the United States is Wall Street. It's not Washington, D.C. I think there has been a shift of consciousness that has slowed the government down and put them on edge. When Barack Obama wanted to go invade Syria, there was a huge uprising that was not acknowledged. But there were millions of people emailing, writing letters and saying, no, we've had enough war. We are war weary in this country. We are tired of criminal wars over bullshit pretexts in parts of the world that we don't care. It's not in our interest to know, that don't threaten American national security as to what goes on there. Syria was the touchstone to global nuclear war. And the world stopped the United States. I never once in my life, for as long as I have been standing up opposing this, have I seen the United States of America stopped when it's totally overshot itself. Barack Obama shot itself in the foot and saying, we have decided unilaterally that we got to overthrow this guy because of chemical weapons. Vladimir Putin played a key role. He obeyed the law. Barack Obama breaks them or changes them. That was a key thing. But it wasn't just Putin. It was 7 billion people saying, that's fucking enough. And the United States empire is crumbling as we speak. Now, what's clear is, because the U.S. has been the hegemonic alpha dog for so long, is that the world doesn't have a plan B for what happens if the United States fails. But the United States of America needs to fail. The US dollar needs to fail. There is no hope for any of us unless that oppression, that straitjacket, that iron mask in which we are forced to live is removed. And we have to see that. The US dollar is like one of the major legs that must be broken down to change that consciousness about money. It's like Chief Seattle said, not until you have killed the last fish and cut down the last tree and poisoned the last river will you discover that you cannot eat money. So now the dollar is collapsing. The US empire is in retreat. The world doesn't quite know what to do, and this was discussed clearly when I went to Moscow in 2001 with the Ministry of Finance. Consciousness has not evolved to the point where people realize that money is nothing. It's not money is the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. The belief that it's power. You know, here's the cruelest joke. And I can hear George Orwell and Terence McKenna laughing their asses off. What does it say on here? In God we trust. This is God. This is the God that's dying. This is the fucking God that means nothing. It's not clean air. It's not fresh water. In the world that we live in right fucking now, the hypnosis is going to break. Because everybody's going to realize almost in a heartbeat, what matters is, do you have food to eat? Do you have unpolluted water that you can drink? Do you have air that you can breathe? Are you able to maintain your body temperature at night? And at that point, the switches go on, and mankind is faced one of two choices. That's it. When the dollar goes, it's going to be a very, very short period of time before it comes to that real fork in the road. What I'm aware of, people who had been unapproachable before, people whose consciousness was like the people living in the Matrix where you were Neo out of the Matrix, okay? It's hard to deal with, but I see people in the Matrix starting to crack. And that's satisfying. I've been waiting 35 fucking years to see these cracks appear.
All the streetlights surround me in the wall-to-wall prison of my city. Flickering dirty neon over alleys mean and dirty streets, while my neighborhood is torn down around me.
Hello, everybody, from that nightclub at the end of the earth, at the end of the world. It is Michael C. Rupert, Tracker of Truth, here with you again on Sunday, the 3rd of November, 2013. Every week we make another show. I breathe another sigh of relief and go, how did we get this far? But we did. Vice. A three-man crew has been here for a week, and I got 3 cameras focused on me as I'm doing this show tonight. I'm very pleased with the experience in that I got to talk about the things that are important to me to talk about, but I also got, I guess if I were to say it, I got filmed walking my walk. I got filmed living my life, okay, so that's Vice. Now, Guy McPherson's pretty much done with Colapse, and guess what, guys? So am I. Collapse always assumed that there would be a place of stability, a place from which whoever survived would have a chance to rebuild anew. But we are now in a place where it is abundantly clear, as my Facebook activity shows, because everybody's just holding their breath now, that between Fukushima and climate collapse, the certainty of near-term human extinction has become, as opposed to collapse, the dominant issue facing all of us, and those of us who love you enough to tell you the truth will talk about it. Carolyn, welcome back on the show. Nice to have you back.
Thanks, Mike. It's wonderful to be here again. And, you know, the point I want to make on the show tonight is not so much that I'm done with Collapse, but that we have to reframe it in a different way. You know, many of us assumed that we had 20, 50, or 100 years before the collapse of industrial civilization was complete, and we've referred to it as the long emergency. But the game may be over much, much earlier, and so all that I've been writing and ranting about for 13 years in terms of preparing emotionally and spiritually is not something that we can dawdle around with anymore.
Where I am with the prioritized threats facing humanity right now, there are only 2. One is climate collapse, the collapse of the jet stream, global warming, in which we know of an absolute scientific certainty that we have baked a 4 degrees centigrade rise above baseline, baseline being the start of human industrial civilization, carbon emission. And human life goes extinct after 2 degrees centigrade. It takes a longer period of time. 4 degrees, and now looks more like 5, with 25 positively reinforcing feedback loops, such as the melting of methane hydrates in the seabeds, or the thawing of Arctic tundra in Siberia that produces columns of methane, a greenhouse gas 100 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide in its initial release than CO2. The North Pole is now warmer than it has been in 140,000 years. This is an irreversible trend. We've reached and crossed multiple tipping points with that. Not all of the feedback loops are reversible. But I have a dear friend, Guy McPherson, who's a professor emeritus from the University of Arizona, who's a climate scientist, evolutionary biology, who is just an amazing guy, who walked a similar path. He walked away. Who has compiled now irrefutable, multiple peer-reviewed scientific studies showing that we got 4 degrees cooked in, and calculated showing human extinction by the year 2030. The science is there. It's not being covered by mainstream. We live in a world that's been taught to deny everything. That's what's producing the bizarre weather all over the planet that we are seeing. The jet stream is meandering and collapsing, which is sucking Arctic cold way too far south, but it happens in bands. So you have a biblical drought in one band, and then you have, torrential rainfalls in another as the jet stream gets weak. And climate collapse, climate chaos, what it does is it makes it impossible to do things like permaculture, which is one of the things that I love more than anything else. Permaculture, one way of looking at it, is thoughtful and protracted observation, but it implies that by observing and interacting with the land and doing permaculture on the land, learning how to harmonize all of the things in your ecosystem, that you're going to have a stable climate in which that observation has some value. Climate collapse takes that away. Plants cannot adapt. Animals cannot adapt quickly enough. We just had 100,000 head of cattle freeze to death in South Dakota, which was, they were grazing on summer pastures one day. They hadn't grown their winter coats yet. They were hit by a blizzard and they all froze to death. It was not malfeasance on the part of ranchers who'd lived there their whole lives. They couldn't adapt to the climate. We had 20-some inches of rain in Boulder, Colorado, biblical flooding there, not too far from here recently. Plants cannot adapt that quickly to a changing climate. And what people who are disconnected from the earth don't understand is if the animals die and if the plants die, we die. There are too many people who have been hypnotized into believing their food actually comes from a grocery store. It doesn't come from a grocery store. It comes from Mother Earth.
Don't ever use conspiracy theory that's so insulting. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's real. It's science. It's documented. I'm not going to come from the defensive standpoint on this. There are more people in this country who are aware of the dangers of fucking GMOs than who are ignorant. And I'm not going to come from the standpoint of talking to the people who are ignorant. I just don't do it. GMOs are poison. Genetically modified organisms intended to make a profit. Once the genome, the DNA, could be modified, the corporations said, well, if you modify it, then you can get a patent on it and you can own it. And everything that uses that patent, you get profit for. That's life. That's life. You can't patent life. You're not patentable, nor am I. But the way GMO laws work, essentially, is to argue that if you and I ingest GMO corn, or most people are eating a whole lot more GMO than they realize, that could modify your cells, and you then could become the profit of the corporation, the property of the corporation, under that logic. I'm serious, man. I am so serious. There are billions of people in the world, man, who are out of the paradigm. They're out of the matrix. They've taken the red pill, and they don't jump back in to argue with the matrix. So that's for the testiness of my response. There's a lot of awake people out here. We ain't buying this bullshit anymore. Why do we have to? It's obvious why GMOs are dangerous, just as obvious why it is that fracking is dangerous. And for people who can't see that, we're not apologetic to you. We just kind of feel sorry for you. Monsanto is getting its ass kicked around the world. Romania, Mexico has just banned all GMO corn. I mean, this is happening boom, 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 boom around the world the same way it's happening with fracking. And I'm on that side, you know. If nobody should ever ask me to have to explain why it's necessary to defend my life. We all come from great Creator and Mother Earth. And these wonderful cousins, they offer their lives for us. And we're grateful to them for it. And we thank them for what they give us. And in return, we have an obligation to make sure that the herds prosper and that they live and that they're healthy and they have good lives. And these yaks have pretty good lives. Yeah, happy yak.
Happy yak. Commercial meat is the most disrespectful way to treat an animal. Not only are they raised and slaughtered in inhumane conditions, they're fed all kinds of drugs, they're fed toxins that pass on to the human body. They're not organic meaning chemical free. What's important to preserve is the clear relationship with nature that's unfettered by man-made interference. You know, it's man's improvements, it's man techno-fixes that have created all the problems we're facing in the world right now. Oh, they'll just come up with some new fix for this and all they do is make stuff worse. But this is the way human beings lived for thousands and thousands of years before the industrial age came along with a very close symbiotic relationship. Now with the buffalo and the Native American, that was sacred, especially for the Plains Indians. But it's the same with all things. I look at these yak as my cousins, my relatives, as is everything alive on this planet. We all come from the same place. We all come from Mother Earth. Every molecule and every animal, every plant, all comes from only one place, this planet.
I want to be able to grow food all year round, no matter what. No matter what's going on in the cities or the politics or anything, I want to make sure people have food. And that's what my mission is. We're still not totally self-sufficient, you know, but that's my goal. That's my aim. I mean, if everybody, somehow communities were able to have their own energy, their own fuel, their own food supply, then whatever happens over there, that community's okay, you know. I know you asked me if I think the world's going to collapse. I'm not too concerned about it because, you know, it's so up in the air. We're all kind of co-creating this whole thing at the same time. But I decided to start focusing on my own deal so I can help people, you know. I decided to create my own story, and that's making sure people have good food and good water, you know, healthy water. My goal is I hope that all restaurants, all food will be coming back to where it used to be, because before we started doing all the chemicals and everything was organic, you know. And back in the day, everybody was connected to a farm. You know, your aunt or your grandma, you know, you had some kind of connection to farm, you know. And now we're so far removed. It's you know, if things do go crazy in the world, how are people going to eat? My favorite part is working with the yak. Why don't you want it? Really? Okay. If you have a white yak, that means you'll have many blessings. And so this guy tried to buy her from me for $3,500, and man, it was hard to say no. I could have really used that, you know. And I talked to a Tibet guy after that, a Tibetan, and he said, you did the right thing. He said, you don't sell your white yak. Keep your luck. And this is like a little mini Tibet, mini Himalayas. Just hanging out with them for a little while, you feel peaceful. And they'll start getting more comfortable where they'll just start laying down and hanging out. And this is our well, one of two big wells that we have. It's 1,500 feet deep. And so this water comes in there and shoots up this pipe, goes in like a waterfall into the pool. So we're in a 6,500 square foot greenhouse at Chocoré Ranch. The concept for the pool is that the water is 78 degrees. So having a heat mass here in the greenhouse is good. And the reason for a waterfall, it kind of helps with to add a little bit of a nature feeling to it, you know. That's parsley there. And I got peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes. I'm thinking about growing fruit trees. These tomatoes, we grow them all year round. They'll last you a long, long time. It's tough because this isn't actually like a really big production greenhouse. But man, to grow a little variety of some things and have it for the locals. What do conventional farmers think about what I'm doing? I don't think they probably give it a whole lot of thought. And I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just going to do what I believe in and what I feel is right. And hopefully I can convince them. So then what I realize is I have to show them by doing it. I want to show them that there's a different way.
The second threat, which is more imminent, is Fukushima. It is an unprecedented nuclear disaster. March 11th of 2011, there was a Richter 9 earthquake off the coast of Fukushima, eastern Japan. The massive earthquake caused major damage to the reactor buildings, but they survived to one degree or another intact. So when the tsunami arrived after the earthquake, it was a big tsunami, like 40 feet, that went many, many miles inland, killed many tens of thousands of people, 10, 15,000 people, 20,000 people. Here it comes! What the tsunami did was overwhelm the diesel generators that had been installed in a very low-lying spot close to the beach and drowned them. So there was no electrical power supply to pump water, which made it inevitable that you were going to have meltdowns. There was some heroic action on the part of TEPCO staff, who eventually decided to flood the reactors with seawater, which is very corrosive. It's not a good thing to do. You've destroyed the reactors. But what they did was they saved 3 small atom bomb explosions. They prevented that for a short period of time. But then you had, inevitably, without power, meltdowns. And the cores of nuclear reactors become super hot. They melted through their containment vessels, out of the buildings, out of the structures, and melted into the earth. Some of them, because they were in pressurized tight spaces, water will decompose break down into its constituent elements, hydrogen and oxygen, hydrogen being extremely explosive. So you had a hydrogen explosion at Building 3, which just blew the top off. I think everybody has seen the film of that. You also had explosions at 1 and 2. What happened as a result of that, you had catastrophic releases of radiation into the upper atmosphere immediately, within days of the earthquake and tsunami. And what we are finding out now, and it's been covered up by the Japanese government, covered up by TEPCO, covered up by the United States government. It's been hidden. We have been bathed in radiation. The Northern Hemisphere has. It's traveled the globe. It's been detected heavily along the West Coast, where infant mortality soared in April and May, birth defects soared, leukemias have soared. We now know that the West Coast is being bathed in radiation, not only from the atmospheric release, but now from what we've learned in the last few months, from the fact that TEPCO has been dumping 300-400 tons of super radioactive water into the ocean every day for 2.5 years. And those leaks are getting worse, and the amounts of radiation being leaked are getting worse because the site itself is deteriorating, it's degenerating. And Building 4 is teetering. It's absolutely rickety. There are 6 spent fuel pools at Fukushima. The one that's suspended in this teetering, rickety building above what was reactor number 4 contains the radiation equivalent of 15,000 Hiroshima bombs. If those fuel rods have an open air combustion, and they are very long and very heavy, like cigarettes in a pack, and the way they used to be removed was they would have a computer operating a crane to remove them very slowly so that they didn't contact, especially in open air. That's when you get the disaster. The cranes have been destroyed. The building is teetering. The computers that were there to run the cranes to make sure that you didn't get a contact have been destroyed. They're going to have to be removed by hand within a couple of months because everybody knows the building's going to fall over. This is almost an impossible task, and I'm seeing some tacit admissions. We don't know how to do this. But now everybody knows, it's out, that the ground underneath the reactors is turning into mud. They've been pouring hundreds and thousands and millions of tons of water just in there trying to keep everything cool so that you didn't have another critical event, but it's eroding the foundations and the land from underneath the building. And that water's been pumping directly into the Pacific Ocean for 2.5 years. The plankton eat it. And then something eats the krill, eat the plankton. Then something comes along and eats the krill, the small fish, the bigger fish. So by the time you get to a bluefin tuna eating what it eats, the radiation has been concentrated through 4 or 5 meals. And 100% of the bluefin tuna that have been caught recently off the coast of California have tested positive for radiation. Starfish are dissolving. Mackerel are showing up with bleeding eye sockets and ulcerations. Sockeye salmon are turning up with radiation. Killer whales off the coast of Vancouver are losing their ability to vocalize. They're dying at an alarming rate. The Pacific Ocean has been lethally poisoned, the northern Pacific, but eventually the oceans will circulate it everywhere. But Tokyo Electric Power, the Japanese government has lost control. The radiation now, currently, even without the fuel pool falling over, is so intense near buildings 1, 2, and 3, reactors 1, 2, and 3, that it disables robots. And it's been admitted that nobody has the technology to build a robot capable of withstanding those amounts of radiation to get close to it to do anything. Radiation also turns metal extremely brittle. They've had a crane failure there. There are 2 cooling towers that have already broken loose for moorings big enough that they could fall on Building 3 or Building 4 at any time. And we expect that with typhoons or another earthquake. So that radiation is already so intense that you really can't work on what's there. You can't contain it. We don't know where the cores are. The cores could be hundreds of miles down below now. They've passed water tables. Nobody knows where they are. If Building 4 falls, the whole site must be abandoned. There's no debate about this. Nobody disputes it under any circumstances. Not the Japanese government, not TEPCO. If those rods go, then every other set of fuel rods has to be abandoned, and they cannot be kept cooled, and they will go. The combined radiation from all that will be released if Building 4 goes is 85 times the amount of cesium alone that was released from Chernobyl. Now, you have 1 million deaths already from Chernobyl. This is a human extinction event. We are all dead if this happens. It is a human apocalypse, not just to humans, but to all life on the planet. Fukushima is not a Japanese problem. It is not North America. It's a human problem. Every human being, every living thing on the planet is at risk.
Hills of Aubrey, have we eyes to see? Love is gathering. All the words that I've been reading have now started the act of bleeding into one. So I walk on high and I step to the edge to see my world below. And I laugh to myself while the tears roll down, 'cause it's the world I know. Oh, it's the world I know.
Collective Soul, the world I've known, and I know that that song hit home to everybody. Well, let's get in this space, let's wrap it around us, and let's be here together in tenderness with Carolyn Baker, who's my guest tonight on the Lifeboat Hour. We got 6 minutes or so for the bottom of the hour. The new book that you're writing, I have to laugh now because I look at everything that I do. I even look at, these Vice guys filming here now, and I'm going, are we going to be alive by the start of the new season in March, if that's where it airs, or if it airs in 6 months from now? Why do we go through this stuff? And the answer that I keep coming to is something that I wrote on Facebook a couple of months ago. Somebody said, why don't we just roll up and die now and give up? And I said, a warrior in times of great stress like this and when facing imminent death, and these are my words, continues with the daily routines and the daily rituals as if there will be a tomorrow, because it holds open the possibility of victory. Why is it important to keep putting one foot in front of the other, Carolyn?
Well, you just answered that question. We absolutely have to have a vision of possibility, even if that possibility never happens. Sometimes we have to act as if. And, we need to be, the best use of our time right now is to really be looking at how we've lived our lives. It's time for searching and fearless moral inventories of how we've lived. What was really good and decent and precious about my life? Where did I fail myself? Where was I less than I could have been? All of those questions.
If I had it to do over, what would I do differently this time?
Yeah, those are all really, really important questions. You know, The Guardian published recently 5 top regrets of the dying, and this is what they were.
Oh, good.
I wish I had the courage to live a true life, a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And 5, I wish that I'd let myself be happier.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Those are great.
And they're real and they're true, and that's what people often say in the last hours.
An unlived life is not worth examining, but an unexamined life is not worth living.
Exactly. Yes, you betcha. You betcha.
Until the human race realizes that the only war that's being fought here is for control of our minds and what we perceive as real, and what we choose to respond to. If there is anything that sums up all of indigenous peoples, and I'm not just talking in North America, I'm talking indigenous First Peoples on every continent, Kalahari Bushmen in Africa, in Australia, in Asia, Bitakia Yasin, is the awareness that we are all connected. There is no them and there is no us. There is no division. Because when we start to respect all of that, we begin to respect ourselves. Now there's a major, obvious caveat here. When mankind was living in balance with this planet, human population was fairly stable at about 1 billion people. There are 6.1 billion people on this planet alive today who did not exist before oil and natural gas and nuclear power. There is going to be a die-off. That is a balancing. That cannot be averted. I cannot offer some happy Pollyanna solution to that. Love is the only vibration. It's a higher vibration than fear. Our physical reality is a product of our consciousness, which is a product of what we carry in our hearts. And if we carry fear in our hearts to the point where the consciousness is one of fear, then all we would manifest would be more destruction. The means to save, to resurrect, to make amends with, to reconcile with, to heal ourselves with Mother Earth and everything that lives here will only become available to us once we realize that cooperation rather than competition, that love rather than fear is the only state of consciousness in which we can successfully live. And lo and behold, those are the ways our ancestors lived 40,000 years ago. Those are the ways the Lakota lived on the plain, the way the Apache lived in the desert, the way they lived in South America, the way the indigenous people, they lived in a state of love and balance for everything. But we are drunken humans on this mad, addictive desire for another line of cocaine, another dose of cheap energy, another car, another joke, what? Look at where it has brought us. Now that all of human race stands at the brink of extinction, and we may die, life will go on, spirit's going to be fine, we're just going to go some other place. I don't believe death is an end, it's a door. You go through it. You know, Crazy Horse, the great mystic, said, the spirit world's more real than this one. He wanted to spend more time there than here, because this place gets to be real hard sometimes. But we stand at this most amazing moment, the end of the fourth sun. There is an answer. Now, 7 billion souls aren't going to make that, I don't think. It would be nice. It might happen. I don't know what miracles lie out there. But one thing that people on this planet it's really starting to sink in is what we've been doing is not working. What the whole human race has been doing. Until you change the way money works, you change nothing. You have to stop infinite growth. We can't feed any more people. We can't fit any more people on the planet. Human population is still growing exponentially, although the die-off is pretty significant now, and it's going to get a lot more pronounced. But beyond all of that, now Fukushima and climate collapse have brought us to a place where we face the end of our species within 17 years. at the outside, 2030, 2040. The only way, if we want to live and if we want children to live after us, is to stop human industrial activity right now. Otherwise, we're an alcoholic, cocaine addict, heroin addict, sitting at a bar stool weighing 80 pounds, anemic, trying to convince ourselves that we look good with AIDS and herpes and all these damn diseases. We're slamming booze down our throat, we're sticking a needle in our arm, we're snorting the line, and we're committing suicide saying everything's under control. It ain't. So we are reaching a climax, and some people would say, and I don't believe this at all, some people would say that Mother Earth is going to kill us like we're an infection. I believe, and it's my experience even now, that Mother Earth, because we are of her, we are her children. We are created from her. What mother cannot love her child still loves us unconditionally and is begging for us to wake up. When I came here, I said goodbye to pretty much everything that I knew. The only person I knew here was Doug, my bandmate from Venice, and my dog. And Chris Long's place here, one of the first places I came, the vision told me to find someone who could tie my macaw feather in the Lakota way, and I ran into Chris. And then I went into town, and the spiritual connections to the people of my spirit family, this Medicine Lodge here, the Singing Stone Lodge, and has been the most beneficial. But I've met some really cool, awesome, and very tough people here who are very good at being there for you when you need it, and it works in both directions. So I've been blessed. You know, I had no idea what I was going to find here, but I'm extremely happy with the people I've met. I met Jessie Ray just a few days after I landed here. She was tending bar at the Bliss.
I met Mike almost a year ago. And, oh yeah, over a year ago, shoot. And yeah, we instantly connected and just been good buds ever since. You know, we have the same kind of understanding of some of the way things are, and our hearts are in the same place, I think.
The same very warped sense of humor.
That too.
My perception is that we've known each other through 4 or 5 prior lifetimes, and we're old friends from Atlantis or from who knows where, you know, Greece, Rome, wherever. But it was an instant soul friend connection, you know, and love hanging out with her.
The first time I ever came here, I couldn't take my eyes off the mountains. I was just blown away by the solitude and the seclusion, and also the townspeople and how open everyone is and welcoming to each other. You know, I find that if I'm out walking or just being silent and quiet, you know, and really listening and keeping my eyes open, that I can run into all sorts of beautiful things. And, you know, it might not be a fox or a coyote, but just, you know, the plants and the water and the trees all around us. I mean, they're all alive, and they all have a subtle energy that anyone can pick up on if you're paying attention.
Especially since my DMT, ayahuasca, and peyote journeys, I do feel and I do sense, I am aware of a connectedness to animals and creatures, and it's an awareness that has grown steadily, not just since I've been here. That was developing in Northern California before I got here. But it's just a way for me to celebrate the fact that everything that I'm looking at here and I'm experiencing is alive and is a relative of mine, so that I can greet relatives the way I would greet humans greet relatives in their own family. I went through this huge epiphany in 2012. This was right as all this crisis happened, when I gave up CollapseNet. People like me and Guy McPherson and Dmitry Orlov, many of us who have walked this path for a long time, we all realized that in 2012 that by Cartesian analysis, we had encountered a number of problems that it was not possible to solve. Okay? Now it's become that much more in our faces. And if I'm happier now, it's because, shit, I've been walking the walk I've been walking for 35 years, being called an idiot, you know, being attacked, threats on my life, being discounted, being a faithful scout who brought the reports back. And over time, my reports have been found to be honorable and true. I'm a scout for all two-leggeds. Two-leggeds mean native reference for all human beings. My scouting reports have been good. That's why you're here talking to me now. I'm enjoying this not just because I'm tripping on its exciting times and I'm getting off on the world ending. It's like I'm so not alone anymore. I was one of the first, man. The scout walks alone. It's the loneliest walk of all, and that's why it's respected, and that's why it's hardest. I didn't know this until I met my Indian teacher. That's why the scout's knife is sharp on both edges. This is the scout's knife because it cuts your life to go out into the world of the enemy and see what they are and who they are and how they live and how they operate, and to experience the belly of the beast. You got to bring back a good scouting report. You got to do it with honor. But once you get to the belly of the beast, you have to make your way back to the light, to balance. And the scout walks alone. It's hard. And I didn't appreciate all this, fully until now. But so when I say I'm getting off on this, I'm sorry. You have to allow me that I spent a lifetime earning the right to smile when I realize that I'm not alone and I see other really exceptional people rising up and innovating and kicking ass and leading. Leading. Am I beautiful, Jesse Ray? You have to tell me. Yeah, Kit Carson's probably 4 or 5 miles away, as the crow flies, as the eagle flies. Speaking of which, did you hear I said crow and one just went off over there? I love that. That's the valley floor, which is about 8,000 feet, so we're at about 10,000 feet right now. And this is called, we call it the Big Stupa. It's a Buddhist shrine. It's a great place for meditation. There are many places like this around that are marked as wonderful spiritual centers and places to stop and connect and catch your breath. And this is an amazing place to get centered and grounded again. This place has been known to have enormous spiritual power for thousands of years. To be aware, as the indigenous people say, mitaki eyas, and everything is my relation. Our belief, a spiritual belief, that everything has a consciousness. The rocks have consciousness, the trees, the plants, the sky, the water, Mother Earth, who we're standing on, and Father Sun sitting right up there, the great mystery, looking down on you. This is a place where there is so much less noise. There is no noise here. There's no interference from outside city stuff or cars honking or electricity or power or jet planes or anything. And as you develop this consciousness and as you spend time out here, it grows to the point where with practice you really feel a connectedness to everything. Like I can feel my connectedness to that crow that's looking down on us now, honking right over us. Hi, guy. That's my cousin, we're all related, and this is a place to come and bask in that, plus to get a long vision and a long view. I've said before, this valley is so big. What it does is it invites a human consciousness to expand, to fill it, which is a beautiful invitation, as opposed to when we get this narrow tunnel vision of our everyday life and paying the bills and everything else. And this invites you to expand to an awareness much larger. Somebody asked me, to slow down on my Facebook page and remember the everyday man. And I said, I gave up on the everyday human a long time ago. Now I only serve the exceptional ones. I serve the warriors. I serve the ones who are out there, who are the best of the best. And that makes us all sharper together because nobody's as smart as all of us. I get feeds from all over the world. And I can really see and participate in this awakening that is taking place. And it's one of those great dramas. Will the awakening happen in time to make a difference? And I don't know that it does make a difference. And this is where I've come to just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, looking at climate collapse in Fukushima, which is that I think we're all dead. But I'm utterly convinced that the state of mind we are in when we die will make all the difference in the universe as to where we find ourselves once we've walked through the door. You know, I firmly believe that the level of consciousness and love that we carry and we create, and the people that we surround ourselves with, what we hold in our hearts at the moment of our death makes all the difference in the world. There are people who would lay down and die. Well, that's not a warrior's path. You know, just give up, just get loaded, just get stoned, just party. Well, that doesn't, you get tired of that real quick if you try it. But it's what's in your heart, it's what you're doing. It's the warrior's way. You fight until the last minute. One way or another, no matter what happens, there is a balancing that's coming. There is a balancing that is here, that it is now. And what's left for us is to decide how we're going to face it and what's important. But between climate chaos and Fukushima, there shouldn't be anything else that anybody anywhere on the planet is concerned about. Because unless those are dealt with, we're all dead anyway.
Floating in space. Do you realize that happiness makes you cry? Do you realize that everyone you know someday will die? And instead of saying all of your goodbyes, let them know you realize that life goes fast. It's hard to make the good things last. You realize the sun doesn't go down, just an illusion caused by the world spinning round. Do you You realize the sun doesn't go down, it's just an illusion caused by the world spinning round. Do